Welcome to the Whisk Web training video series. The purpose of these videos is to introduce you to the use of WordPress, the UW theme, and being a user of the Whisk Web service here on campus. In this first video, we're going to talk about how do you log into your site and some of the initial setup process that you would do when starting to build out your first site or updates that you might need to do to your site as you are continuing on with it. So to log into your Whisk website or to your um, live production site, you can start at whiskweb.wisc.edu and click on the login button here or up here in the upper right. We use our campus NetID and campus password to get access to the Whisk web service. And please be aware that if you are off campus, you will have to have the Global Protect VPN installed and running to access the Whisk web service from a non-secure location. Once you're logged in, you will see a screen that will look somewhat similar to this. However, it might not be the site that you need to be editing at this time. To access all of the sites that you have the ability to edit, you would hover your mouse over the My Site section up here in the upper left, and then choose the site that you want to edit from that list. Once you land on that screen, this is the dashboard area. The dashboard area is a one-stop shop for a lot of pieces of information regarding your site, WordPress, and the UW theme, but primarily your use of WordPress is going to involve these menu options over here on the left. This is where your content creation and content editing is going to occur. We will cover all of this in a future video. In this video, though, we're going to start by editing some of the site-wide values that your users would see when they come to your site. To do this, you would click on the blue Customize Your Site button right here on your dashboard. If you don't see this button, you have two options to get to the Site Customizer area. The first is clicking on Screen Options in the upper right. You can make this section visible by checking the Welcome option right here. You can also access the Customizer area by hovering your mouse over Appearance and then clicking on Customize. In the Customizer area, you will see on the left side a menu of a number of options that you'll have access to, as well as on the right side a what you see is what you get view of your site as you are tinkering around with some of the options here on the left. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to touch on site identity. So go ahead and click on that. And from there, you'll see the four values that you have access to. The first one is your site title. And the site title is pretty straightforward. It is the banner text that appears at the top of every page within your site. Ideally, your site title is going to be something that is referring to who you are, what your program is, what your department is, what your lab name is, anything of that nature. That is what the site title is meant to be. It's meant to be the initial identifier of who you are. Below that, you have the tagline. Now, the tagline is a value that appears right beneath the site title. You'll also see that a tagline is also a value that could appear as part of the browser tab or browser window value up here. So you can kind of see with the Whisk Web Service site, there's a Division of Information Technology tagline right there. The graduate school, they have graduate programs and services at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So essentially, the tagline is one more opportunity to add more branding to your site. This value can be an active link. So the tagline URL field could be a link that you create to make this a value that when people click on, they can go to a parent division, a parent department. If you're supported by a grant or other type of funding, this link might link out to that site if necessary. You just need to put in the full URL to make this a link. So now you can see it is an underlined value instead of just a text value up there. And then finally, you have the option to set your site icon. So the site icon is this little image value that appears in a browser tab or browser window. It's also the image value that is applied when somebody bookmarks a page within your site. And so within the UW theme and within WordPress, you have the ability to set a custom site icon if you so desire. To do that, you would click on the Select Site Icon button. You would go into your media library and choose an image that you have uploaded. The media library is where all of your items go that you want to make available through your site, images, documents, which we'll talk about in a later video. But this is where things go. It's drag and drop, or you can click on the upload files and then select the file to upload to your media library. Once you're in there, you can click on one of these items to make it your um, site icon and then click select in the lower right. Now, because this is a very specific value, it's 512 pixels wide by 512 pixels high, you're going to probably be prompted to crop this image to a more appropriate value. So in this case, I'm just going to center this up just right and then click crop image in the lower right. And once it refreshes, you'll get a preview of what it's going to look like when you set this value. Now, if you don't have a site icon that you want to use, that's okay. You can always just leave it as the default, which is this red background with the white W in it. Now, once you're done with your changes, you can commit these to your site by clicking on the Publish button up here at the top. Once these things are done, you can go ahead and go back to your customizer menu by clicking on the little left arrow right here, the less than symbol. And again, a number of options to choose from, but we're going to go ahead and scroll on down to the footer area. Now, the footer area is all of the stuff that appears here at the bottom of your site. If you see here on the left, the footer area has to do pretty specifically with just contact information. So, campus address, you would put in your campus address here. A map URL, I'll just kind of put in some values just so you can kind of see what these values are. Contact email, contact phone, a Facebook URL, in Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Flickr and Pinterest. So you can kind of see as you're doing this, the icons for those social media platforms are appearing down here. An option for a footer menu. There are two footer menus down here, and then finally another email address that you are prompted for. And we'll kind of touch on the email addresses in a second here. But once these values are set, you can click Publish to commit those items. To see what a fully fleshed out footer looks like, we'll go ahead and pop back on over to the grad school site, grad.wisc.edu. And you can see here's what their fully fleshed out footer looks like. So here's that contact information right here, the um, the address, the campus address, a map URL. So when you put in that map, so it can be something from map.wisc.edu or from Google Maps if you want to use that. What it does is it just adds this pin value, and then you have the ability to click on that to get an actual map for it. Below that, you have the email address, phone, the social media icons. Here's that other email address down there at the bottom, and then a menu value. So it's pretty straightforward what goes in the footer, contact information, like I said. So the two things that I really specifically want to point out in this section is the email address that you are prompted for, the two email addresses that you are prompted for, and then just to briefly introduce the idea of the menu and just kind of a brief introduction to navigation structures. So in the Contact Us section, you are prompted for a contact email. The purpose of this email is more in line with who would you want people to contact if they needed to find out more information about who you are, what you offer, How could they find out more? How can they join? How can they donate? How can they, get in touch with somebody else? That type of thing. It's more of a departmental informational address. The one down below, this one is more in line with who would a user contact if they have a question about the website in general? Links not working, downloads not working, accessibility questions, things like that. That is the purpose of this email address. So, two different entities could be responsible for these two different um, responsibilities. They might be one and the same, but just be aware of what the different expectations are for these two email addresses. You'll also notice that these email addresses are not person email addresses. They are Office 365 service accounts. And a service account is a good idea to use as a point of contact when you are collecting information, mainly because one of the things that could potentially happen is a person may no longer be the point of contact for this information. And so all of the emails, all the communications, all the setup that they potentially did using their personal email address here may no longer be valid. You may not have access to that information because they're no longer with the university, they're no longer with the department, they're no longer responsible for website stuff. Instead, you could use a service account, and a service account stays with the department, stays with the university, and can have multiple people attached to it. So when you need to get access to that information, it stays with that account rather than leaving with a person who potentially also has left. So that's one thing to consider as you are building out your sites is to talk to whoever your local IT is and to see if you can request a service account for your website. And again, you can kind of see, this one's just a webmaster at department.wisc.edu or division or program or whatever it might be .wisc.edu. Secondly, the menu option. So one of the things that you will have to consider as you are building out your site, rebuilding your site, or just doing some discovery is how do you want people to move through your website? With your website, a very important part of this is navigation structure. And you kind of take a look at what the grad school has here, where they have, some links up here, some links up here. They have links on the page itself to move people through. And at the very bottom is the footer menu. And the footer menu can just be considered as another location for um, a navigation option. But also, you could kind of look at the footer as a last line of navigation into your site because the way that your site looks on a desktop versus the way that your site looks on a mobile device, if we just shrink this down a little bit, there's a lot of scrolling and menu options aren't always going to be as easily accessed on a mobile device versus on your desktop device. And so the footer menu can be just considered as one more option for people to move through your site. And you can consider it to be, I've gotten you down to the bottom of my page and you still haven't clicked on something. Maybe these are the things I need you to be most aware of. So you can look at it as an importance, a menu of importance to move people into your site. But it's just a consideration to make as you're sort of thinking about how do you want to actually move people into your site further. So again, back over to here. We've already published this, but any changes that you make sure that you do click the publish button up here at the top. Again, I click on the little left arrow right there. The next value down is the search options value. And so on this tab or on this particular menu option is the ability for you to turn on or turn off site-wide search for your website. By default, in the UW theme, any newly created sites will now have the search turned on for them. Now, this is a recent addition to the UW theme, so it may not be true of your site because your site may have been created before the theme was updated. So just be aware of the fact that it may be on or it may not be on. To access it and to edit it, you would go to the search options area in the customizer and use this little checkbox toggle. And you'll see once you check it on, the little search field appears up here in the upper right. Now, it's a good idea um, to have a site-wide search turned on, mainly because the idea of your website is to provide information to your audience. If your audience can't find what they're looking for, it's important to give them a means to search for it. This turns on a search box on every page within your site. So if we look at, again, the grad school, there's their search box there. We go to this page right here. The search box stays up there. So it's just a good idea to have this on just from a standpoint of giving your audience a means to look for something if they can't find it. Now, when you clicked on that checkbox, a second option appears, and that is the option of using the Google Custom Search Engine functionality. There is a knowledge base document linked right here that opens up and walks you through what this process is, but at the end, there is a Google form that we ask that you fill out. Once you filled that out, you would um, it would get sent up to our campus G Suite team, the Google team, and they would create the search engine account for you and provide you with this ID value here. Now, the reason why you might want to consider using the Google Custom Search Engine functionality is because Google just creates a more robust search opportunity for your audience. It uses the Google search algorithms. The search is a little more um, logical, I suppose would be the way to say that. And it just creates a better search experience for your audience. And so that's why you would want to consider using it over the default WordPress search functionality here. So again, you would use the knowledge base document, go through this right here. This is also a spot, a recommendation to instead of using your personal account to request the Google search ID value, instead use a service account and have the service account be the administrator for that. So that way, again, it's not tied to a person, it's instead tied to the account there. And again, any changes that you make, you click publish and then one last click back to the menu there, and then down into the Google Services area. So the UW theme provides the ability to use three separate Google service functions for you to make use of with your website. So the first one is Google Analytics. And what Google Analytics does is it allows you to track the use of your site through, statistical quantitative means. Essentially, what Google Analytics is going to tell you is how many hits are you getting in a day, week, or a month? What pages are being accessed most often? How are people getting to your website? What types of devices, what types of browsers are they using? Geographical information, where are they accessing your site from? So what Google Analytics does is it provides you a lot of information about how your site is being used so that you can make some informed decisions about when to make changes or what changes to make. So where Google Analytics will tell you where they're going within your site, Google Tag Manager will give you the ability to actually check what they're doing and track some of the things that they're doing within your site. So for example, Google Tag Manager can be used to track things like how often are particular links being clicked, how often are particular files being downloaded, how long are movies that are you're making available on your site being played. Things like that, Google Tag Manager will provide that information for you. And again, it allows you to make some informed decisions or to inform the decision makers of what's being done on your website. And then lastly, there's an option for you to uh, uh, attach Google Search Console verification to your site. Essentially, what Google Search Console will help you do is it will allow you to, tell Google to recrawl or to ping your site. This will help with those sites that are launching or relaunching, and essentially help Google search engine results, start to pick up your pages, your new pages, a little bit easier. There is a knowledge base document for going through this process. There are some other things there that we would be more than happy to talk you through when it comes to user experience, content strategy, things of that nature. So no changes here. I would click publish if I did make any changes there. Um, and I'm going to go ahead and click that arrow right there. There's nothing else that we need to talk about, but we will be back here in a couple of future videos. So you'll see this page again. So once you're done in your customizer area, you can click the little X in the upper left right there. That will take you back to the last page that you were on. In this case, I was in the dashboard area, so there was um, nothing to worry about there. That's it for this first brief training video. Again, just an introduction to logging in to some of the initial setup of your site. The next training video will walk you through how to create content using pages and using posts. And then the final training video will walk you through some of the navigation options. So how do you set your home page? How do you create menus? And how do you update and add menus to different areas within your site? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us at cms-support@doit.wisc.edu, and we'll talk to you soon.